this village could talk, it would shake his head and point at those two sisters. Sit well, sip water, because today's story is hot. By the end, you'll know why some nicknames should never be gifts from the mouth. They were born a year apart and grew like opposite seasons. The elder was long and lean, as sharp as a broomstick. People started calling her Needle. The younger was soft, round and bright like a ripe mango. People called her Plump. Their mother didn't like the names, but one day, a market woman said it by mistake. The children laughed and that was the end. Names can stick like palm oil on white cloth. At first, the sisters were close. Plump tied Needle's scarf every church morning. Needle hid fried plantain for Plump after school. But slowly, the house itself became a stage for comparison, and their mother was the director. Needle, run to Mama Paul's house and buy me dry fish. Plump can't run fast enough with all that weight. Or on other days, she would say, Plump, help me pound yam. Needle's broomstick hands can't carry this pestle. She thought she was being practical, but her words cut sharper than she knew. The sisters began to see their differences not as blessings, but as weapons. Plump noticed how people admired Slim. Taylor smiled when Needle walked in. Fabrics fell in love with her bones. She moved like she owned air. Quick steps, chin up. Plump learned even earlier that people had jokes for big. Aunties pinched her cheeks as if they paid rent there. Women in the market would shout, "Ha, seafood! This one does not suffer." And when she laughed too loudly, someone always said, "Easy, earthquake." And when their mother bought fabrics to sew clothes, she never failed to make another comparison. She would laugh and say, "I had to buy extra yards for Plump. Her body always swallows cloth." Then she would turn to Needle with a smirk. But for Needle, just give the tailor half a yard and she would still have leftover. Sometimes, even at mealtime, their mother would laugh and say, "Needle, see your belly, flat like you swallowed only air. It's because you eat like a bird." Then she would turn to Plump with a sigh. "But you, my dear, your cheeks and your belly are always round because you eat for 10 people." Needle would laugh. Those words stayed with them, and before long, they began to throw them at each other. "Don't lean on my chair," Needle would say. "Do you want to break it?" "Break it, please. Your bones will snap before this chair does," Plump would fire back. They turned everything into a match. Who walked faster? Who finished chores first? Who the neighbors greeted? Who the tailor praised? Their father said nothing, just sighed the sigh of a man who paid for 2 sets of shoes yet could not buy peace. Needle and Plump carried their rivalry into every corner of the house. When their mother sent them to fetch water, Plump would balance her pot gracefully and walk as if she was carrying feathers. Needle would wobble behind her, the water splashing against her sides. "Careful before river follow you home," Plump whispered once. When it was time to pound yam, their quarrel turned into performance. Needle's strokes were weak. The pestle sounded like a stick tapping drum. Plump's arms thundered, each pound shaking the mortar like thunder. "You're only good at shaking house," Needle said. "And you, even the yam is laughing. See how it's still strong under your broomstick hands," Plump retorted. Their mother would clap her hands in frustration. "Both of you, if this pestle could talk, it will run away from your noise." The neighbors heard them too. Some laughed, others shook their heads. Children passing by often repeated their nicknames, giggling, "Needle, Plump." The names followed them like shadows. Their quarrel reached a breaking point when their father fell ill. It started with a cough that refused to leave. At first, everyone thought it was just the harmattan dust. But weeks passed, and the man who once carried kegs of palm oil with ease now lay too weak to sit upright. Their father's sickness came at the worst time, just when his palm oil business was supposed to bring in the most money. The red oil was ready in drums. Buyers were already waiting, but the man who usually lifted, measured and bargained now lay on a mat too weak to even sit upright. Their mother stayed back at home, fanning him, boiling herbs, whispering prayers. That meant the burden of work fell squarely on Needle and Plump. At first, the villagers laughed. "Ah, these two, they can't even fetch water without quarreling. How will they handle oil business?" But necessity has a way of forcing people to forget quarrels. Every morning, Plump would roll her wrapper tightly and step behind the barrow, her arms bulging as she heaved heavy kegs of oil onto it. She pushed with all her strength, sweat dripping down her face, dust rising at her feet. Children clapped when they saw her pass. "See Plump, strong like 3 men." Meanwhile, Needle walked beside her, head high, hands free, looking like she was only there for decoration. Some mocked, but when they reached the market, Needle showed her own kind of strength. Her voice cut through the noise like a bell. She called out prices, attended to customers, made quick calculations in her head, and charmed buyers until they paid without argument. "You want the best oil? Look here, shining like gold, fresh like morning sun. Test it, your food will thank you." And customers believed her. Some even said, if not for Needle's sharp mouth, half these kegs would have still been sitting. When they returned home, Plump wasn't done. She carried oil to customers' houses, her feet heavy but steady, moving like a cat herself. Needle stayed back, sleeves rolled, washing the sticky, oily utensils until they gleamed. "Your hands are too thin for lifting," Plump once teased. "And yours are too fat for scrubbing," Needle shot back with a smile. But this time, their words had no venom. They were simply describing what they had both come to understand. Strength had its place, and so did skill. Day after day, they worked like this. Plump the muscle, Needle the mouth. And while their mother nursed their father at home, she listened from the veranda to the sound of their daughters returning each evening. No more bickering, no more shouting matches, only tired footsteps, tired laughter, and sometimes even a shared joke. Slowly, the village began to notice too. "These sisters," one elder said, watching them return from the market, "are like the two hands of a woman pounding yam. One alone cannot do the work." But the girls were too focused to care. They were carrying the weight of the family now. And slowly, the coins began to gather. Every trip to the market, every keg sold, every delivery made, needle-thin hands counting money, plump hands carrying loads. They tucked it away carefully, refusing to spend a single extra. That was how they were able to contribute for their father's treatment. Their mother used the money to pay for the herbs, the hospital checkups, and all the care their father needed. Slowly, his strength returned. The cough that had rattled him quieted. The weight he had lost began to creep back onto his bones. One bright afternoon, he stepped out to the yard, leaning on a stick, and said with a smile, "My daughters kept me alive." Needle and Plump looked at each other. For once, there was no insult on their lips, no rivalry in their eyes, just relief, just pride. And in the moment, they finally saw the truth. Needle's sharpness and Plump's strength were never curses. They were two halves of the same coin. Moral of the story: parents should be careful with their words. What feels like a small joke about a child's looks or habits can leave lasting scars. Instead of comparing children, celebrate their differences, because every child deserves to feel valued just as they are. Comparison between siblings doesn't build closeness, it builds walls.